All right. Guidelines for our oops, I skipped the agenda. Oh, no, guidelines for our virtual meetings. This meeting is being recorded. By staying in the meeting, you are assenting to being recorded. You can change your picture or name to be incognito. Raise your hand or type an asterisk into the chat if you want to speak. The stacker for this meeting, that's Chris Offerman, will pay attention to the order and unmute you in turn. Timekeeper is D. Please be mindful of time limits. Use stop video if you need to take a break from sharing your screen. Start video when you are ready to return. Step up and step back. Take or make room. So if you have spoken a lot, step back. If you have not spoken, please step up. Agenda 5:30-ish, which we are right on time for. About Solidarity Lowell in brief intros. 5:45, Solidarity Lowell committees, allied organizations, announcements, candidate announcements. Then we have Jon Cohn for the Fair Share Amendment. Then we have our very own Marissa Dupont on redistricting. And then we have our wrap up and our next meeting details.
And there's one.
All right. So the social distance hour, quarter hour. Introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, where you live, and if you are a potato, what way would you like to be cooked? One sentence, please. So my name is Caroline. Pronouns are she and her. I live in Centerville. And if I were a potato, I would not want to be cooked. Chris.
I'm Chris Offerman, live downtown. Pronouns are she, her, hers. On a day like today, if I was a potato, I could be baked because I just need to sit outside. Caroline, are you going to go through the list, or do we do the next person calls the next person?
No, I think it's easier if Caroline just calls on everyone.
Yeah. So Marissa?
Okay. Marissa Dupont, my pronouns are she, her, her. I live here in Lowell in Pawtucketville. And if I were a potato, I would like to be cooked potatoes au gratin.
D.
D. Halzak, she, her. I live in the acre. If I were a potato, I would like to be boiled and made into potato salad because it's too hot for hot food.
Paul. Paul, you're muted.
Okay, Paul Gaudette from Highlands. My pronouns are he, him. If I were a potato, I'd like to be French fried.
Allison.
Hi, am I unmuted? Hi, Allison Sweeney. Pronouns are she, her. I live in South Lowell, and potato chips.
I can't hear anybody. Can anybody hear me?
Oh yeah, I can't hear Caroline. I can hear you, Ron.
It's weird. You all suddenly disappeared. I'm assuming because I've been unmuted that it's my turn.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
There you are. You're back.
Perfect.
Okay. My name is Ron Peacetree. My pronouns are he, him. I live on Christian Hill. And mashed potatoes with the skins and onion.
Kale.
Hi, Kale Connerty, she, her. I live in downtown Lowell. Twice baked potatoes because that sounds kind of luxurious. I like to treat myself.
Lisa.
Hello. All right. Lisa Arnold, she, her, lives downtown. And I just found out that Mill City Barbecue is serving their sweet potato fries with a drizzle of maple syrup. And that sounds perfect for me.
Benjamin?
I'm sorry, Caroline. Yeah, Ben Opera, Pawtucketville. Can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay, Pawtucketville, and if I were to be a potato, I would mashed potato on a day like this all the way.
Nice.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Hi, Eileen Morrison, she, her. I live in the Highlands, and I would be a scalloped potato.
All right. Linda?
Yes, I'm here, Sally. Caroline, how are you?
Good. So we're doing the social distance hour. Name, pronouns, where you live, and if you are a potato, what way would you like to be cooked?
Oh dear. Okay. Linda, my pronouns are she and her. I live in Lowell, downtown Lowell, well, close to downtown. And if I were potato, I would like to be mashed with a lot of garlic, onions, and cream.
Nice. Thank you, everybody. This was very interesting. All right. Did I skip something? I may have. All
And you
right.
skipped me.
Did I? Oh, I'm sorry, Amy.
You did, and I have an answer nobody gave, so I want to give it. So, hi, Amy Baranowski, downtown. Pronouns are she, her, and I would definitely want to be a latke.
Oh. Okay. So give me one moment. I'm trying to figure out where the. There we go. All right. What is Solidarity Lowell? Solidarity Lowell is a volunteer-based group of community members of Greater Lowell working towards social justice by defending the human rights, dignity, and equality of all persons against hate and discrimination. The Solidarity Lowell Coordinating Committee is your elected team of volunteers running and coordinating the meetings, organizing events, disseminating relevant news, and sharing calls to action. More volunteers are always welcome. So Solidarity Lowell is a chapter of Progressive Mass. Progressive Mass is a statewide, member-driven grassroots organization committing to fighting for a vision of shared prosperity, racial and social justice, good government, and environmental sustainability in Massachusetts. They have lots of committees. Please join one if you are interested. And if you have any questions about Progressive Mass, you can always feel free to email somebody on the coordinating committee. Victories. So no matter the outcome of a blockbuster US Supreme Court case that is expected to be decided next year, abortion will remain legal in Massachusetts thanks to the Roe Act. Congress voted overwhelmingly to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. The US Supreme Court rejected the third challenge to the Affordable Care Act, saying that they had no standing to bring a suit. The VA, or Veterans Association, will start offering gender confirmation surgery to veterans, reversing a former ban. Emmy Awards allow gender-neutral descriptions now. Nominees may now be a performer instead of actress, for instance, although categories remain the same. Who else has any victories?
How do we do the raise hand thing?
Ron, you're unmuted.
Okay. That's not me beeping. I don't know who that's beeping. I was slightly late coming because I was just out in Maynard and Acton for their Stop Asian Hate gathering, which despite the fact that it was blisteringly hot out, had a crowd that was almost couldn't fit on the sidewalk where we were supposed to gather. So I think that's a great victory, frankly.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Anybody else have any victories?
Then I'll chime in. When I went to, which was it now? One of the recent city events in front of City Hall that the Lowell Sun wrote about, where our Congresswoman was there, and she and several other people repeated that racism is a public health crisis. Everybody except 3 city council members applauded, and it was noted who those 3 were. I'm not going to name them now. The Lowell Sun didn't name them either, but we all know who they are.
Any other victories? So join Solidarity Lowell Upbeat on Facebook, and that is the link at the bottom. I'm gonna election subcommittee. Is it C?
We're still working on things. We're just, nothing new to report.
All right, thank you. So there will be a watch party. Speaking of what Chris was mentioning, remember that city council meeting where a few select councilors showed their true colors? Let's rewatch that horrible, awful, racist city council meeting together with commentary. So this is to find out who our councilors really are and who should get your vote. Please save the date, July 11th, 2021, so in a couple weeks. And that was chosen because it's near the 1-year anniversary of the epic and unfortunate failure to pass the racism as a public health crisis motion. So. Marissa?
Ron has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Ron?
When is Lowell holding the election of the delegates to the Democratic State Caucus?
Not till July, Ron.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So Marissa, are you ready for this one?
Yeah, I can take this. So we're going to be organizing meetings. Well, we're in the process of organizing meetings with all of our state reps. So that's Vanna Howard, however you pronounce it. And I sound so terrible when I said that. Some people pronounce it one way and some people pronounce it another way, and I'm still trying to get confirmation, and I am confused. So I apologize. There is a correct way to pronounce her name. I'm assuming it's Vanna. Okay, now that I've sufficiently put my foot in my mouth. Vanna Howard, Tom Golden, and Ratty Mom are the 3 reps, state reps in Lowell. We are organizing meetings with all of them right now. Chris is working on organizing the one with Rep Howard. I'm working on organizing the one with Tom Golden, and Dee Halzak is organizing the one with Ratty Mom. Vanna Howard is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, July 20th. If you are a constituent, we highly encourage you to be involved. You do not have to speak if you are uncomfortable. We just need as many constituents in these meetings as possible, so that way they know that there are many people who care about these issues. So, well, like I said, we'll be discussing the progressive mass agenda. If you're unsure about that, we can put that in the chat. The Tom Golden meeting, we do not have a date set. However, I am in contact with the aide, and it looks like it's going to be coming up very quickly, hopefully in the next week or 2. We had our rehearsal, well, our prep meeting last week. We have a rehearsal tomorrow. And so we're hoping to get that scheduled very, very soon. And then Ratty Mom, which I don't think anyone is surprised about, has not been in contact with Dee yet, even though she has reached out a couple of times. Ron, you have your hand up.
Yes, are those at large, or do they only represent particular areas? And if they only represent particular areas, which area do each of them represent?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but there's a website we can also put in the chat that allows you to find your reps. But I believe for Christian Hill, you are in Tom Golden's district, Ron.
Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, if you're interested in attending these meetings, again, we highly encourage you to do so. You do not have to speak if you are uncomfortable. Please email the person who is organizing the meeting with your rep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right.
Has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Back. All set. Marissa, I missed who it was.
D.
D.
We're running out overtime on the first section.
Thank you. All right, Marissa?
Yep. So the Merrimack Valley Interfaith Sanctuary Network is a network of a number of different churches and as well as Solidarity Lowell. We are currently hosting a gentleman from Togo who is seeking sanctuary in the United States. The long and the short of it is that it's been a mess. He's been here for 3 years, but he finally has a court date in July, which is a really big deal. So hopefully he'll be able to get his work visa very soon. However, that's the good news. The bad news is the couple that he's been staying with while the sanctuary space is under construction, the couple that he's been staying with are pregnant. So he needs, they need his room that he's been staying in, unfortunately, for the baby, and it needs to be very soon. Initially, we were thinking it wasn't going to be quite a rush to find him a place, but unfortunately now it is. So if you know of anybody who has a spare room, or if you yourself have a spare room, please email me, Marissa at solidaritylowell.com. As usual, we are responsible for $500 a month in fees. Well, not fees, but expenditures for him, money for him. So if you're able to donate, the website is on the screen, or you can just go to merrimackvalleyproject.org and there's a big donate button. Just click on that, but make sure that you write asylum in the special notes part. It's a PayPal form, so it's very easy to miss, but just look for a place where you can write notes.
Great, thank you. So postcard writing group, I'm just gonna say, if you're interested, please contact me and I will give you more information in the light of our time. Unpacking Whiteness Dialogue group, there will be a new session coming up in the fall. If you are interested, please contact Win at solidaritylowell.com. Are there any allied group updates and announcements? Right. Seeing none. Are there any candidacy announcements? Right. So in light of time, I'm going to go forward. So
there's at least one candidate.
Sorry, Carolina, I was muted. I didn't realize.
I apologize too.
My apologies. This is Ben Upera. I'm running for school committee in District 1 of school committee, which is a combination of districts 1 and 8 for council. So Pawtucketville and the Highlands. I'm running for school committee. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a group I really enjoy. But I really apologize that I haven't been able to be calling in because of conflict that I have on the last Sunday of every month. But today I told those guys, well, you have to wait. I have to be over here. Thank you.
Caroline, we have more than one candidate here. Susie?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, a little bit noisy back here. Yes, I am announcing my candidacy today. I am running for Lowell School Committee, District 3. That consists of Belvedere and South Lowell together. And I'm looking forward and maybe having you guys be part of our support group. And I'm excited. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All set?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. All right, so we are going to welcome our guest speaker, Jon Cohn from Progressive Mass, and he will be speaking about the Fair Share Amendment.
Would I be able to get screen sharing power for, I have a slideshow I can use.
You should be all set, John.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for being here. Who here is familiar with the Fair Share Amendment before I start? Great. So this is basically just a refresher course and kind of an orientation thing. And also just talking points that you can use when, if you decide to present to other folks. So I'm just gonna use our general slideshow, which I will be getting set up. If folks are broadly familiar, I'll make this faster rather than slower. Present. Okay. So, okay. Fair share. So Progressive Massachusetts is part of the coalition called Raise Up Massachusetts. Raise Up is a coalition of faith, labor, and community groups that formed to do ballot questions around economic fairness because of the various hurdles that those face in the legislature. And so the current campaign that we're working on is called the Fair Share Amendment. You may remember the Fair Share Amendment from the vast history of trying to get it on the ballot, which is later on in this PowerPoint that I will explain. So just as this notes in terms of what's in this, just an intro and purpose, some kind of economic statistics to show about why it's needed, bringing in the past, going to the present, what the Fair Share Amendment is, and what's happening in the campaign and how folks can get involved. Okay, just basically a repeat of the last slide. So I'm gonna go to the next one. So the first section of this is just kind of orientation people about what's happening in the state of the economy. One thing that you might kind of be familiar with Massachusetts is Massachusetts is one of the most unequal states in the country. We're a deep blue state. We tend to rank high in different quality of life standards, but who has access to that quality of life shows a lot of inequality, shows a lot of economic and racial inequality. The statistics from Mass Budget about income inequality in Massachusetts. So the average annual income of those in the top 1% in the state is $1.9 million. That's the average. Once you hit just under 600,000, you can get into that top 1%. Obviously, that means you have the multi-millionaires and billionaires bringing up that average to 1.9. The average income of everyone else is just over 61,000. So you can see just how much of an order difference of magnitude that is, where the average annual income of the top 1% is about 30 times what it is for everybody else, which is a rather kind of glaring contrast. It's funny, I didn't realize that was actually the next thing on the slide. I'm just like, okay, what's that math in my head? I didn't realize it's right next to there on the slide. So the top 1% take home 23.8% of all income in Massachusetts, which is another kind of glaring statistic of income inequality in Massachusetts. Just to see, this is also just a slide looks at income growth over the coming decades. So starting in 1979 and going to 2015 at the end, you can see the income growth of the top 1% shooting up, like starting to rise in the 80s, really starting to rise more as it was getting into the late 90s. And even though there are obviously bigger drops and rises, but it's all very, very, like much steeper growth than for everybody else, where it's the order of magnitude, kind of the growth from, you can see the difference between these two lines in 1979 and in 2015, and you can see the stark contrast. And as we'll talk shortly with the Fair Share Amendment, where it would only apply to income above $1 million, you can see that it's been quite a long time since that was the average income of the top one. Like it's gotten much larger than that, and it's wild that it was even that high in the early 2000s, as you can see there. And beyond just that, in terms of the inequalities in the state, we also see that playing out in the tax code. So what this chart looks at, which is also from Mass Budget, is the percentage of income people pay in total taxes. So you pay taxes in many different ways, right? The income tax, which is what we were just talking about, is one that we're all familiar with. And in Massachusetts, it's a flat rate of about 5%. So you pay 5%, whether like where the multimillionaire pays 5% income tax, the secretary pays 5% income tax. The multimillionaire will pay more in total, but the same percentage. But when you look at how much of people's total money, right? If you take income taxes, you take property taxes, which again, property taxes are a type of tax that even though those at the top will pay a lot more in value, it doesn't fall as heavily on them when they pay that. Because if you're rich enough to have several large mansions, none of that taxation is really being felt by you. Whereas if you're somebody who's still in a neighborhood where you bought property that's since gained a lot of value, but your own income hasn't gone up, that hits hard. And then sales and excise taxes. Again, where the less income you have, the greater share of that will be of your total income. And as you can see in this chart here, that creates a situation where the top 1% pays a smaller share of their total income in state and local taxes in Massachusetts than everybody else, just because of how much that tax burden ends up falling on people who have less money to begin with. And that's a rather striking contrast and shows how that top 1% is really getting off well, not even just with the money that they make, but how comparatively light their share of the taxation hits them. So as showing, inequality in Massachusetts growing, continuing bad and growing, shows the need to address that. And inequality is bad really for many different ways, right? It's bad for those on the bottom end of the spectrum who aren't getting to see their wages grow as fast as the money goes to the top. And it's also bad, as I often like to stress, from a democratic or political perspective, that when people can have that much money per year, they're likely to bend the systems of government to get them to keep it and get greater access to power. And so it ultimately weakens democracy over time and helps continue that inequality growing. So beyond that, we also need money for our state, right? Anybody who, as I think some later states go around, if you've ever used public transit in the state, if you've ever gone to school in the state, you've seen that we could use more money, and like countless other things, housing, public health, the environment, all could use a lot more money than what we're currently funding them at. And so when approaching how we raise that revenue, thinking about it has to be fair, right? So it should be those who benefit the most should be paying the most. Sustainable, it's something that should be able to last long term. And adequate, we should actually be able to raise the revenue to fund what we need and what we deserve as a state. So there comes in the Fair Share Amendment. What the Fair Share Amendment is, it's a constitutional amendment that increases the tax on incomes over $1 million by 4 percentage points. So that's essentially 4 cents per dollar on every dollar over 1 million. Your first million, like I feel almost in a way when we're describing this, even though it's a different tax, I feel like I'm like channeling my inner Elizabeth Warren to talk about how like for your first $1 million, it doesn't affect you, but only above that would actually hit anybody. And then that revenue raised from that would be in a dedicated fund for transportation and public education. And the reason this has to be a constitutional amendment is the Massachusetts Constitution currently bakes in a flat tax into our tax structure. So it says that any type of income, like that basically any type of income has to be taxed at the same rate for anything within whatever category of income that has to be at the flat rate, which is bizarre because if you think about the federal government, the federal government has had progressive taxation for over 100 years, where we often, if you read discussions in Washington, you'll often see debates about what that highest rate should be, which I believe is currently in the mid-30s. And it has historically been as high as 97. And with a kind of a graduated rate, this wouldn't bring us to that full graduated rate that the federal government has, but it's a step in the right direction. So, background to the Fair Share campaign. As I noted before, some of you who here collected signatures back in 2015. Did anybody do that all the right way back when? See, I can see Marissa's hand. I can't see everybody because I can't because of this screen sharing. But if other folks did, shout out to you as well. So back in 2015, we had to collect over $150,000, $150,000 signatures to qualify for the ballot. And so that was back in the fall of 2015, which feels like a lifetime ago. And that was set to make the 2018 ballot. What had to happen then is that you needed to have 2 constitutional conventions in the legislature, where it would need to get a 25% support in 2 sessions in a row, and then it would be on the 2018 ballot. But then there was basically a corporate lobby lawsuit attacking the Fair Share Amendment as being unconstitutional because of a provision in the law that says that you can't ask people that a grassroots-led ballot initiative can't ask people multiple things. And so the courts ruled that the Fair Share Amendment was asking people both to raise and to appropriate money, and that it couldn't do that. But legislators can ask people as many questions as they want on the ballot. Hence the current strategy kind of after that, where some of the Fair Share Amendments best advocates in the legislature, Representative Jim O'Day from Worcester and Senator Jason Lewis from Winchester, I believe he's from Winchester in his district, that filed it as a legislative proposal. It just had its second constitutional convention a couple of weeks ago. So it has now had its first last session. So it's now on track to be on the ballot for November 2022. November 2022, when we get to vote for a governor, we get to vote for all the statewide races, and it could be, it'll be a busy year. And this will be part of it. And so as I noted, that money goes toward public K-12 education, public higher ed, and transportation. Why public K-12? Why public K-12 education? You may remember last session when the legislature passed the Student Opportunity Act. If you don't, that was just updating our 25-year-old education funding formula. As I say, there are many things from the early mid-90s that last. Shout out to the music of the early mid-90s, which many of which is still endures. But the calculations for education funding is not in the same category. And so they finally needed to update that, but they didn't actually put the money behind that. But this would provide about $2 billion a year raised by the Fair Share Amendment would help close that gap. With public higher education, we're actually in Massachusetts spending about $83 million less than we spent 20 years ago, even though costs increased significantly. What that means, it means higher tuition for students and their families who have to bear the burden of that cost, as well as budget cuts that mean loss of programs, loss of staff, which just kind of exacerbates that underlying inequality and the role that public higher education can be as a source of mobility in the state. And why invest in public transportation? If any of you have used it, you know the answer to that. I'm currently calling in from Boston. I have jokingly said about the MBTA years ago that it doesn't work in hot weather, it doesn't work in cold weather, it doesn't work in weather. And that's unfortunately the case in public transit in general, where it's often not as frequent, not as reliable, and not as high quality as we deserve in a state as affluent as ours. Transportation is also key when it comes to equity, because not everybody can afford to have a car. And it's helps kind of recognize mobility as that basic right that it is. And the more people can get onto public transit as opposed to cars, helps reduce emissions. And it just helps for basic economic functioning, you need people to be able to get to where they want to go. So that works. As it notes here, our transportation systems can either reinforce and exacerbate our social and racial inequities, or can actively work to counteract them. This is kind of just repeating. I noted that even like investing upfront, as folks know, if you invest upfront in public transportation, you help save yourself costs later on. It's an impressive stat that every $1 spent to keep a road in good condition avoids $6 in future costs. So that so why upkeep is such an important thing. So where are we now? So as I noted, the Fair Share Amendment is now slated for the ballot in November 2022. In the coming months, we'll be doing a few different things to help build support. One of those is identifying supporters. It'll be a long, expensive campaign. So the earlier we can identify supporters and be the first person that people hear from, the better, before they start hearing opposition talking points. So we have digital pledge cards that I'm sure, Marissa, if you feel like, if you can drop the Solidarity. Do you have an SL one yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I can drop the general progressive mass one in the chat, but we can also get you a custom made one. We all have physical pledge cards as well, if you want those. So if you'll be going to different events this summer and you want to have, if you enjoy going up to your friends and or random people and asking them to sign stuff, as I'm guessing you do, it's a great opportunity. It's also a great opportunity to have like oh, friend I haven't talked to in a while, we need to hang out again. And it's actually just to get them to fill out a pledge card, but you also get the value of the social experience as well. So many different ways, relational organizing, just basically bothering the people that you know, because they're the easiest people to respond, that should respond to you. So just helping to collect all those early supporters for the campaign, as well as that, helping to engage more people. So if you are a part of any organizations that would be interested in getting a presentation about Fair Share, we have people who can do it. We're happy to train you to do it, because the more people who are engaged and early, the better. And raising the profile, that'll be with organizational endorsements, with municipal resolutions. I know that there is a Merrimack Valley group. I don't know when they're seeking a Lowell resolution. There is some discussion of timeline for all of that, as well as giving stories. And there's a link later on about, so that we can hear about what the Fair Share Amendment means in different communities around the state. The second bullet point actually already happened, which is an exciting thing because this PowerPoint comes in May, so that's already done. And okay, so things to take action. If you're part of organizations that would like to be an organizational endorser, you can let me know in the chat. I can get you the form that's represented here. I can also drop the custom Progressive Mass pledge card in the chat, as well as get Solidarity Lowell, your own custom one. And it's your raiseupma.us/story is if you want to talk about what these additional investments would mean in Lowell, whether in the city as a whole or your neighborhood in particular. And then that's for events coming around the state. I don't know when the Lowell launch was or if it happened already, but there's a Merrimack Valley team that I'm happy to connect anybody with if you want to get more involved with that. So those are my slides. I will drop, I can stop sharing and I can drop that link that I mentioned into the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
John,
okay.
Can you send me those slides, by the way?
Yes, can do. Then I will share you on that now so that I remember.
Thank you.
Okay, that is now done. So let's see, I can see. Yes, so I see your questions. All of the Lowell legislators did. If I remember correctly, Golden and Nangle have, Nangle no longer there, had voted no in the past, but all of him, I think, eventually came around. I don't know if Nangle ever came around. I think he was opposed last session, but you don't need to care what Nangle thinks anymore, which is a good thing. And in terms of like who all votes, I can also drop the link if you're curious as well, who voted for it, because I can believe I can find a link to the whole vote itself. Let me see if I can find that now. We'll see if I'm fast enough, or if not, I'll send that as follow-up. Do I have it? Trying to see if I can find it from posting it. I'll send this follow-up, but the Lowell delegation did support it, which is good. So bother them to do more. Right? Because if they say that they support something, make them act like it.
Yep, we'll be meeting with all 3 of our reps very soon. So this is definitely on the list.
Nice. Any other questions that folks have? Who here is interested in collecting pledge cards?
I know we've already included it in the rapid response update email. So it's just the general link. We weren't sure who was going to be comfortable with going out in the public, you know, when this.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a long-term thing. We'll be doing it kind of across the year. So like if it's even in the fall where you feel like going out in the public and doing things, the ballot question is not till next November. So it's something you can do across 2021. So that'd be like,
Ron had his hand up. So
yeah.
I'll have all the information in the notes, and yeah, if you want to make us a you know, the virtual pledge card, yeah, we can do. That'd be awesome.
And it's something as well when we have with the physical pledge cards, when it eventually, like for that, if let's say as it gets to the fall, if kind of canvassing becomes a thing again in Lowell, it's a great opportunity. If you're knocking on the doors and talking with somebody, it's a quick additional ask. I have found it to be a great thing if you're talking on the doors to somebody who wasn't on your packet or on the list that you have, and you don't feel like asking them what their name is, but you get them to fill something out where they're giving you their name without you ever having to ask. I've loved that.
That's very sneaky, John.
And then any other questions that folks have?
Ron, did you have a question?
He asked if people were willing to do pledge cards. I raised my hand to affirm that I was.
Awesome, thank you.
I mean, ultimately, this is a Band-Aid. Ultimately, we need a amendment that gets an actual progressive income tax and a progressive property tax into Massachusetts and join the 21st century.
It's definitely a first step. There's a lot more, like,
yeah,
there's a lot more that we could do. There are many different ways we could tax the rich a lot more than we do now. This is an important first step that will bring in real additional money to the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also need to do a lot more on the federal government level too.
Don't even get me started there.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So John, I'm going to be talking about redistricting if you want to hang out and like fill in.
Oh yeah, happy to. It's such an interesting topic. I can stay for about like another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so our very own Marissa Dupont is up to talk about redistricting.
Thank you. Okay, so if you're not familiar with me, I am Marissa Dupont. I live here in Pawtucketville, Lowell. I've been here for about 8 years now. And this was something that came up that I thought was really important. So next slide, Caroline. Awesome. Okay, so oh, and I should probably start on the right thing with my notes. So what is redistricting? It's the process of redrawing electoral district boundaries. It's meant to ensure that every person has fair representation at the local, state, and federal levels. And census data that are collected every 10 years are used to draw the new districts with about the same number of people. And this accounts for the ways that populations have changed and moved across the states and districts. And obviously the census data is not out yet, but what we're trying to do is identify communities of interest early, so that way we can draw, the Drawing Democracy Coalition can basically draw maps and have them ready to go for when the census data comes out. They can just tweak them and then send them off to the legislators. So that way it's all one unified thing for what we're looking for, basically. Next slide. So why redistricting is important. So this is going to connect to what Oh yeah, so how district lines are drawn influences who runs for public office and who is elected. Elected representatives make decisions that are important to our lives, from ensuring safety in schools to adopting immigration policies. And once drawn, these district boundaries are in place for the next 10 years. And their policy impacts can last well beyond that, obviously. Redrawing lines that keep your community together maximizes the probability of electing representatives who are reflective of and accountable to your community. So now that we've talked about that, let's move on to the rules of redistricting. Next slide. So yes, one person, one vote. So this comes from the Equal Protection Clause on the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It guarantees equal representation by evening out district size based on population counts in the 2020 census. And this is a major victory of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, when organizers and leaders fought for fair representation. Next slide. So minority vote dilution. The Voting Rights Act protects the right of your communities to participate in the political process and to elect representatives of your choice. This means that the legislators cannot dilute your community's power, but we have plenty of examples from history, obviously, when legislators have tried, and it's happening currently, which is so wonderful. The best way to prevent the legislators from diluting your community's power is to be involved and vocal in the redistricting process. Next slide. Okay, so just to give you an example, we'll show you what fair representation versus minority vote dilution looks like. So when you look at this image here, there are an equal number of blue and red dots. And when we draw the districts this way, there are two majority turquoise districts and two majority red districts. And then now let's look at how vote dilution works. So next slide. So there's two ways. Yeah, thank you. The animation is fussy. So there are two ways of diluting votes, cracking and packing. So cracking refers to spreading voters of color into small enough portions so they aren't a majority anywhere. And with their voting strength divided, those voters are unlikely to be able to elect their chosen candidate. And this is what we see in the top the top three districts. The turquoise dots outnumber the red dots 2-1. So there are three majority turquoise. They say turquoise and it's not actually turquoise, it's blue, but we'll move on. So there are three majority turquoise districts. And then packing. Packing refers to putting many voters of color in a single district when they could effectively control more. So the packed group is more likely to win in that district, but this drains their voting strength elsewhere. So in this one, the bottom three red dots are concentrated into one district. So even though there are an equal number of turquoise or blue red dots, there are three majority blue districts and one entirely red district. And in each of the top three districts, the red dots are outnumbered 2-1, giving the turquoise dots a majority in three districts. The bottom three red are packed together. Despite having an equal number of both, this map has 3 blue and only 1 red district. Next slide. Okay, so now as I mentioned, we need to define communities of interest. So there's two strategies for increasing representation: equity and power. And the first is to draw communities of interest so that neighborhoods are kept whole in districts. The second is to draw majority minority, majorly BIPOC districts. And we'll talk about that. So communities of interest, core strategy for increasing representation. A community of interest is a neighborhood, community, or group of people who have common policy concerns and would benefit from sharing a single district. Another way of understanding a community of interest is that it provides a way for a community to tell its own story about what neighbors share in common and what makes it unique when compared to surrounding communities. And it's defined by the local community members. So we use both stories and data to define communities of interest. And note that race and ethnicity can play a role in defining a community of interest, but it cannot be used as the sole definition. So residents may have a shared ancestry, history, or language. So for instance, in Lowell, obviously we have a really big Cambodian community. So we can't use just that to draw a district because you can't use just race. But that's actually good for us because, as we all know from our work with the CNRP and CMAA, there's some Cambodians who support the dictator, and there are some who do not. So if we know that there's a certain area of Lowell, say, where, you know, it's a lot of CNRP people, it's a lot of people who do not support the dictator, we could draw the map surrounding those people, and that would be a good community of interest. And if there's a section of the city where there's a lot of people who do support the dictator, again, you could draw a community of interest there as well, just as one example. Okay, next slide. So a second strategy is to draw majority minority districts. These are based on race and permitted by the Voting Rights Act to ensure that communities have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. But we need to be able to prove that the majority has blocked a minority from being able to elect someone of their choice. In 2011, the Drawing Democracy Coalition drew the first majority minority congressional district, now represented by Ayanna Pressley, who we love. And so in our city, obviously, we do have an opportunity here because Ratty Mom's district has the potential to be a majority minority district, if it isn't already. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that, while also paying attention to the Voting Rights Act and everything else. It's yeah. And next slide. So this shows, oh, there's Ayanna. One more time. There we go. Oh, and one more time. There's all these animations. So you'll see Ratty Mom down in the lower left corner, but these are all the different districts that have the potential to be majority minority. So we can draw majority minority districts of just one racial or ethnic group, or we can draw coalition districts where the majority of residents are people of color, but they come from different racial backgrounds. You know, so for example, like the acre, you know, it's obviously not all one racial background. And sometimes people of color don't make up 50% of the district's residents. And in that case, we can still draw an influence district. Drawing Democracy Coalition also doubled the number of majority minority districts from 10 to 20. However, I think they mean congressional. However, 11 of the 20 are represented by white elected officials. And this shows that drawing districts isn't enough. We need to stay engaged over the course of the full decade. Next slide. So a fair redistricting process is critical to a healthy and reflective democracy. The coalition strives to achieve fair districts that equitably represent communities of color, low-income people, and immigrants through a transparent process and maximum community engagement. So obviously, this is where we need everyone to come in and help because we're the people who know our city the best. So we will be helping to draw, like I said, all those different communities of interest ourselves so that it's not a legislator who doesn't live here or someone who isn't as involved in the community as we are to do this. I mean, obviously that could be a shit show for lack of a better term. Next slide. So there are two goals of the Drawing Democracy Coalition. Collect information about communities of interest. We're working with local communities to define what makes their neighborhoods unique and how they benefit from sharing a single district, and then draw statewide unity maps that present a shared vision about representation in the next decade. We're planning to coordinate the drawing of maps of 160 House districts, 40 Senate districts, and 9 congressional districts. We're more likely to get better representation if we work together. If we submit separate maps, then legislators can divide us and draw and approve whichever map works best for them and their friends. So trying to avoid that. Next slide. So right now what we're trying to do is organize our community here in Lowell. We need to recruit and organize people in the area with shared experiences, concerns, or vision. You can help shape its future by telling the story of your community and the way you want it to be told. This also prevents others who may not have our best interests in mind from defining us or ignoring our community entirely. You can be a spokesperson and share your story about what matters to your community by testifying to support a statewide unity map. Next slide. Okay, so upcoming hearings. The big one for us is obviously CD3 on July 8th at 6 p.m. and you can sign up and or submit written testimony at that link there. And the next steps are going to be district map feedback, unity map feedback, in-district meetings, mobilizations to hearings, and then sign up for spokesperson training. And the last thing we wanted to talk about, the last slide, sorry, one more.
Really quick, CDs are congregate.
Sorry, yes, congregational districts. Congressional districts. Okay, so this was another thing that Dee wanted to throw in. Dee, do you want to talk about this or should I cover it?
You can go ahead. Your slide is pretty comprehensive.
Okay. So there's a bill that's up in the House right now called an act relative to reprecincting. And basically this would institute a reform that was proposed after the last redistricting process, which would have legislators start immediately on drawing the district. So like right now, obviously communities are allowed to do that, but the legislature isn't until after the census data comes out. They're prevented from doing that. So this would allow them to do it immediately. So that way, obviously they could spend more time and not have to rush through. But after districts are drawn, the towns would then draw their precincts in ways that would match the districts drawn. And this is the reverse of previous procedures. It's hoped that this would avoid some of the fine tuning that the reverse process is always required. It has been passed by the House and it now needs to be passed by the Senate and signed by the governor. So please email Senator Kennedy. Unfortunately, this wasn't, I don't think this was filed when we met with Senator Kennedy, unfortunately, or maybe we just didn't get to it. But yeah, so we definitely need to contact Ed Kennedy. All right, John, did I miss anything? John and Dee.
I am still here. You did a great job.
Okay, thank you.
I actually was about to just pop in to like note in the chat that I have to head off, but I thought that you did a great job at this.
Thank you, John. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Yeah, so basically, like I was saying, it's super important that we get this done. This affects major legislation for the next 10 years. I was on a meeting with Senator Brownsberger talking about the senatorial districts, and you know, it's like right now our senatorial district, like we have, you know, all these towns way out in, you know, it's like Pepperell and Groton and all these towns. It's like we don't have a lot of common with them, you know, but it's, you have to kind of think about what towns, you know, you want to kind of cancel out some of the Trumpy towns, but you can't do that legally. So you have to try to, and then you're also looking at population, obviously, and what different, you know, different areas have in common and etc. Tina, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering that, I mean, because I know there's a lot of people, a lot of Hispanics and a lot of minorities in the Acre and Lower Belvedere, like High Street and all that. They really don't understand the concept or get the concept of this redistricting. And my thing is how how does that information get out to them? I mean, for me, it's hard. I wanted to run for city council this year, but I'm unable to because I'm going in for surgery in July. And it's a 4 to 6 month, pretty much recovery for the surgery that I'm getting ready to have. So I can't even think about putting my hat in the ring.
Right.
And I know for me, one thing that I wanted to do, and I was putting, as I was putting my group together, was going like door to door and having a conversation with people, because again, a lot of Hispanics don't understand it. A lot of Blacks don't understand it, you know, just in like the like I said, the Acre, Lower Belvedere, the Highlands, some of the Highlands area. I mean, even my niece who lives in Centerville as well, and like she doesn't even vote, like as far as on the state level.
So the good thing about this is that it's not, I mean, obviously it would be amazing if everyone understood this process, but this is more about community leaders and like people who know how the population has changed over time. So my guess is that, I mean, well, my goal anyway is reaching out to a lot of different nonprofits. I know there are people from CBA and Lowell Alliance and a couple others who are involved in this, thankfully, but obviously the more the merrier. But we want to make sure that it's people who understand where the populations have changed, where the population growth has occurred, where more, more like, for instance, immigrant populations have arrived, or if it's just, there's a certain demographic that's just expanded exponentially. So it's just sort of understanding it at that level and being able to say, okay, well, like, there's a huge African diaspora community that lives in this section of town and they live from this street to this street. Like, it's just being able to draw the map and say that's where they are. So, again, it's useful for every citizen to know about this, but not 100% essential. It's just better that the community member who is drawing the map understands where those people are located. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Ron, did you have a question?
Withdrawn.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? I'm looking and I don't see any. Okay, so the next thing, if you're interested in getting involved, you can email me, Marissa at solidaritylowell.com. Or you can contact anyone from the Drawing Democracy Coalition. The next big step, I think, is going to be, I'm not sure. We just, like I said, there was a hearing about the senatorial districts not that long ago. I'm not sure if there will be another one, but there will be hearings coming up about congressional districts and the House districts. And obviously, if you know anybody who is like, oh, they know this whole city and they understand maps and all that stuff, like, send them my way, and we want to get them involved so we can get this done. The House is going to be especially difficult. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Marissa.
You're welcome.
So the 4th annual Solidarity Lowell Summer Barbecue is happening this year, July 25th at 5:30. Meal train, which is to sign up to bring things for the potluck. And the Solidarity Lowell Coordinating Committee will supply burgers, hot dogs, veggie options, and buns. And this will be hosted by Wynn in her backyard. So please sign up on the meal train link. And so quickly wrapping up, you can join us online. We have a Facebook page. We have both a public and a private page versus group. So the group, you can participate in discussions and have access to events, but these are for members only. And if you have a question about what that all means, please contact one of us. Join us on Slack, visit our website. We are on Instagram and Twitter. Yay, thank you for attending, and coordinating members, please stay. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, you can stop sharing those. Yes, so we can see each other.
Want to stop recording?